Every summer, the Grand Canyon kills people who knew better, and in the last decade alone, heat has claimed more than 20 lives on its trails. Not reckless teenagers, not unprepared tourists in flip-flops. People with hiking poles, day packs, and decades of experience. People who looked a ranger in the eye, heard the warning, and walked away anyway. This is one of those stories. It's a July morning at the South Rim trailhead. The air is bright and dry, sitting at a manageable 85 degrees Fahrenheit. A light breeze moves through the junipers. Families are taking photographs. A man is eating a granola bar on a low stone wall. Everything feels fine. Everything looks survivable. She's in her late 60s. Hiking poles, a well-worn day pack, trail shoes that have seen real miles. She moves like someone who has done this before, deliberate, unhurried, confident in the way that only comes from a long history of being right. Two rangers approach her before she reaches the trailhead gate. What they say is standard protocol. The National Park Service delivers this same warning thousands of times every summer. The inner gorge, they tell her, will be running approximately 25 degrees hotter than where they are all standing right now. The dark Vishnu schist walls absorb heat and radiate it back. There is no shade. The climb out is twice as hard as the walk down, and the walk down is deceptively easy. The ranger makes direct eye contact. He is not being dismissive. He is being precise. She looks past him, down the trail, and here's the question that this story never quite lets go of. What does a person have to have lived through to hear all of that and start walking anyway? To understand what she walked into, you have to understand what the Grand Canyon actually is, not as a postcard, not as a landmark, but as a physical system. The Bright Angel Trail drops 4,380 feet over 9.5 miles to the Colorado River. That number sounds manageable on paper. It isn't. Every foot of elevation you lose on the way down is a foot you have to reclaim on the way back, in full sun, on tired legs, in air that has been cooking since mid-morning. The National Park Service doesn't hedge on this point. Their official guidance states plainly, hiking to the river and back in a single day is not recommended under any conditions. Not for beginners, not for anyone. But here's where the canyon becomes something almost architectural in its cruelty. The inner gorge is lined with Vishnu schist, one of the oldest exposed rock formations on Earth, nearly 2 billion years old and almost black. That dark stone absorbs solar radiation all morning and then radiates it back outward, turning the gorge floor into something closer to an oven than a trail. There is no shade, there is no breeze. The walls rise so steeply that the sky above you narrows to a thin ribbon of blue. Once you're committed to that depth, there is no shortcut out, no side exit, no rescue elevator, just the trail, climbing back the way you came. The canyon's kill pattern is specific and documented. Most heat fatalities don't happen on the descent, they happen on the return. The National Park Service lists heat as the leading cause of death at Grand Canyon, and the majority of victims were day hikers, people who carried too little water and turned around too late, when the afternoon sun was already at its worst. Between 2004 and 2024, rangers conducted more than 800 search and rescue operations on the Bright Angel Trail alone. The overwhelming majority of them heat-related. The descent is the trap. It's easy, it's beautiful, and it costs you almost nothing, which is exactly the problem. She had been hiking since her 40s, not casually, seriously. State parks in the Pacific Northwest where the trails were wet and technical. A ridge walk in the Dolomites at 58, Machu Picchu at 61, which her doctor had quietly suggested she reconsider. She hadn't. She'd stood at the sun gate with aching knees and a grin and taken a photograph that still sat on her refrigerator door. She was not the woman the title of this story implies. That word, Karen, has become cultural shorthand for a particular kind of difficult woman, entitled unreasonable, refusing to defer. And yes, she refused to defer. But that refusal didn't materialize from nowhere. It was built slowly, over decades, in a culture that had been telling women like her to step aside long before they were old enough to deserve it. Think about what that accumulation looks like. A doctor who talks to her husband instead of her. A hiking group that quietly stops inviting her once she turns 65. A daughter who suggests gently that maybe she shouldn't go alone anymore. Each one of these moments is small. Each one is arguably reasonable, but they stack. And by the time two rangers in their 30s approach her at a trailhead and begin explaining what heat does to a body her age, however medically accurate, however genuinely concerned they are, she is not hearing a safety briefing. She is hearing the same sentence she has been hearing for 20 years. You can't handle this anymore. That is the emotional logic this story demands you sit with. Not because it justifies what happened. It doesn't. The canyon does not grade on lived experience or personal history. It applies the same physics to everyone. But understanding why she waved those rangers off, understanding the specific weight of that gesture, is the only way to ask the harder question honestly. Because the real question isn't whether she made a bad decision. She did. The real question is, what had her life taught her about the cost of listening to people who told her she couldn't? And so she walked down. And for the first hour, she was right about everything, which is the most dangerous thing the canyon can do to you. The Bright Angel Trail in the early morning is genuinely beautiful. That is not a minor detail. It is the mechanism. The first mile descends through switchbacks cut into the Kaibab limestone, and the canyon walls rise on either side close enough to cast real shadow. The air is cool relative to what is coming. Maybe 78 degrees at trail level. There's a smell of dust and something mineral, ancient. Other hikers are moving in both directions, some heading down like her, more heading up, already sweating through their shirts, already working. A few of them glance at her. A couple hold eye contact a beat too long. No one says anything. She reaches the 1.5 mile rest house at around 8:40 in the morning. There is water there, an emergency spigot, a small covered structure, a place to rest. She fills her bottles. Her legs feel good, her breathing is controlled. She checks her watch, does the math, and decides she feels exactly as capable as she expected to feel. This is the trap at its most elegant. The human body does not send honest signals on the descent. It is spending resources, water, electrolytes, the cooling capacity it will need desperately in 3 hours, and it is spending them quietly, without complaint, because the work is easy and the temperature is still manageable. Heat exhaustion does not announce itself at the door. It accumulates in the background like a slow leak, invisible until the bucket is almost empty. The National Park Service calls it the too far, too late pattern. By the time a hiker feels the first real warning signs, they are often already past the point where walking out under their own power is straightforward. Studies of Grand Canyon heat rescues show that the average victim had been symptomatic, dizzy, nauseated, confused for more than 90 minutes before another hiker flagged them or they stopped moving entirely. She passes the 3-mile rest house. The shade ends. The canyon walls pull back and the inner gorge opens ahead of her, wide exposed, the black schist already radiating. The heat arrives not gradually but as a wall, a presence, something with weight. Behind her, the trailhead is 3 miles up, and she is still walking forward. The temperature in the inner gorge that afternoon was recorded at 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Not air temperature, rock temperature. The Vishnu schist underfoot and on every side was radiating heat it had been storing since dawn, and there is no meaningful distinction between standing in it and standing inside it. She slows. Not dramatically. There's no single moment where the body announces its crisis. Just a lengthening of her stride, a pause between steps that wasn't there an hour ago. She finds a narrow ledge of shadow cast by a rock outcropping and sits. Drinks. Looks at her water. The math is not in her favor, and somewhere beneath the confidence, she knows it. The Colorado River is visible from here, a ribbon of cold green impossibly far below, close enough to feel like a destination, far enough to be a trap. Reaching it means adding miles she cannot afford to reverse. She doesn't go further. This is where she stops moving forward. But stopping forward doesn't mean starting back, and those are not the same decision. Other hikers pass her on the return trail. Most don't stop. One does. He's in his 40s, solo, moving steadily. He pauses when he sees her sitting, the way experienced hikers recognize a particular stillness in someone, not resting, exactly. Waiting for something to pass. He asks if she's okay. She says she is. He offers to walk with her back to the rest house, just to the rest house, no further. She waves him on, smiles, says she just needs a minute. He hesitates. You can picture it, the calculation happening behind his eyes, the tension between respecting someone's autonomy and the thing his gut is telling him. He looks back once after he starts moving again. She is still sitting. Have you ever been in a moment like that where you saw something wasn't right, but someone waved you off and you kept walking anyway? Drop your answer in the comments. That hesitation is going to matter more than he knows. He reaches the rim. He finds the rangers, and the two rangers he finds are the same ones who warned her that morning. They go back down. There is no deliberating, no waiting for a better window. The afternoon heat is at its worst, past 3 o'clock, the gorge walls still radiating everything they've absorbed since sunrise. But there is no better window. There is only now and the trail and the conversation from 6 hours ago that neither of them has stopped turning over. The search is not what movies make it look like. There's no urgency in the cinematic sense, no running, no shouting her name into the canyon. It is methodical. It is hot. It is one foot in front of the other, scanning the trail and the ledges and every narrow shelf of shadow, carrying the weight of knowing that the outcome is probably already decided and that the walking is necessary anyway. One of the rangers had done this before, found someone on a trail after a warning. He knew what the silence ahead of them meant. The other ranger was newer to it. He kept moving his water bottle from hand to hand. They find her beneath an overhang in the inner gorge in the shade, which is where the body directs you when it is fighting for every degree of temperature it can find. She had made it further than some. Not far enough. She died from heat-related causes. The canyon had applied its physics, as it always does, without exception and without appeal. The older ranger sits down on the trail for a moment before he calls it in. Not long, just a moment. He looks at the rock wall across from him, 2 billion years old, black and indifferent, and he thinks about the trailhead that morning, the way she had looked past him, down the trail. Neither of them says, "I told you so." That phrase never comes. If you've ever had to be right about something you desperately wished you'd been wrong about, you already know why. She did not make it back. But the story does not end there, because the question the canyon leaves behind is not why didn't she listen. It is something harder than that. The warning was right. Every word of it. The rangers weren't guessing. They weren't being cautious in the vague cover-your-bases way that institutions sometimes are. They were drawing on documented pattern, thousands of heat incidents, dozens of fatalities, a canyon that has been killing experienced hikers for as long as experienced hikers have been attempting it. The 25-degree temperature differential they cited is measured. The physiological reality of what sustained heat does to a body that hasn't acclimatized is not a matter of opinion. They were precise. They were accurate. They were right. And she was not wrong about her history. That's the thing, this story won't let you flatten into a simple lesson. She had been dismissed before, genuinely, repeatedly, by people who underestimated her and were proven incorrect. The doctor who deferred to her husband, the hiking group that quietly stopped calling, the well-meaning voices that suggested Machu Picchu was too much. Every time she ignored them, she came home. Every time she trusted herself over the consensus, she stood at the summit and took the photograph. Her defiance had a track record. It had earned its confidence. But here is where the tragedy lives. The canyon is not a person with an opinion about her age. It does not have a history of dismissing women. It does not carry bias. it cannot be proven wrong. The Vishnu schist does not care about her refrigerator photograph or her ridge walk in the Dolomites. It applies the same physics to everyone: the 22-year-old athlete, the seasoned mountaineer, and her. Her lifetime of overcoming human dismissal simply did not transfer to a geological system that has no judgment to overcome. She spent her defiance in the wrong place against the wrong adversary. And the Rangers, two human beings, not symbols, not bureaucrats, have to carry that. The weight of a warning that was completely right and still wasn't enough. That is not a comfortable thing to hold. It doesn't resolve into a verdict. If this kind of story, the kind that refuses easy answers and asks you to hold two true things at once, is what you come here for, consider subscribing. Not to support a channel, but to be part of a community that believes understanding a tragedy matters more than judging it. Which leaves one final question. Not about her, not about the Rangers, about us, and what we do with warnings when we've been dismissed one too many times ourselves. Have you ever been in a moment where a lifetime of being right made it genuinely hard to hear something you needed to hear? Leave your answer below. That question is exactly where this story is going next. The next morning, those two Rangers were back at the South Rim trailhead. Same posts, same sun climbing over the same canyon walls, same families taking photographs, same light breeze through the junipers, same air sitting at a manageable 85 degrees before the gorge turned it into something else entirely. They gave the same warning, not because they believed everyone would listen. They knew the numbers. They'd known them before she ever walked past them. Some percentage of the people they spoke to that morning would nod, turn around, and come back another day with more water and a different plan. Some wouldn't. The canyon's fatality record is not a mystery to the people who work it. It is a pattern, documented and recurring, and no amount of precision in a safety briefing has ever reduced it to zero. But here's what the job actually is. It's not to be right. It's not to prevent every outcome. It's to say the thing that might, for one person, on one particular morning, land differently than it ever has before. That's the entire calculation. You give the warning because somewhere in the crowd of people who will wave you off, there is one person who needed to hear it said out loud, in plain language, by someone looking them in the eye, and that person will go home that night. That's enough to come back for. She was a real person, not a cautionary symbol, not a headline, not a shorthand for any particular kind of stubbornness. A woman with a photograph on her refrigerator and a history of being right about herself, who walked into a place that doesn't negotiate with personal history. The canyon applied its physics. It always does. And if you've ever stood somewhere, at a trailhead or a doctor's office, or the edge of a decision, and felt the pull to wave off the warning, because you've heard it before, because you've been right before, because the people cautioning you have been wrong before, that feeling is worth examining. Not because it's always wrong, but because sometimes the warning isn't about your history. Sometimes it's just about the heat. What separates the warnings worth overriding from the ones that will kill you is rarely obvious in the moment, and that gap is where most tragedies live. The Grand Canyon averages 12 search and rescue operations every single week during summer months. 12. The Rangers who run those operations aren't responding to recklessness, they're responding to confidence. The specific, earned, well-founded confidence of people who have been right about themselves many times before and simply could not locate the one situation where that track record didn't apply. That's not a character flaw. It's a cognitive trap, and it catches capable people precisely because they are capable. The canyon doesn't care about your summit photographs, but you might someday find yourself standing at a trailhead, hearing a warning and feeling that familiar pull to trust what you know about yourself over what someone else is telling you. When that moment comes, the question worth asking isn't whether you've been right before. It's whether the thing in front of you grades on that history at all. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Doomed Departures. And if you've ever been that person at the trailhead wrestling with whether to listen, tell us about it below.